true crime podcast where best friends and next door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
And it's still Held in Captivity Month.
Show is.
And I'm going to preface everything with my trigger warnings on this one. Child sexual assault, child abuse, death of a child, and incest. So, good time. Noodle salad. This one's really rough. So if you are not in the headspace today, click away. Yeah. The problem I had researching this case, and I wanted to spend some time talking about it because I feel like we try and be very victim focused in this podcast.
Right, absolutely.
Unfortunately, there's like barely any information about her. It's
all about him.
It's all about him, and I'm going to guess it's more about the perpetrator simply because his behavior is so aberrant and horrible, and people want to know why.
Right.
Someone would do this. It's a fascination I think we've all experienced when ingesting true crime media.
Right. We always want to know why. And we also, I think a lot of times want to just assume that the victim had a very nice and normal life before all of the crime happened to them. So a lot of people don't tend to focus on their backgrounds as much, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know why that is the case, but it is for sure. And I don't know. I wish there was more information on her. I'll include as much as I found from these sources. I found it. Otherwise, I will be focusing a bit more on him simply because he's been studied a lot.
Right.
Yeah. And this case is it's the toughest of all my cases I've covered this month. It's hard for me because I'm a victim of child sexual abuse. I don't like talking about it, but I talk about it in case it might help someone else. I was abused by my mother and a neighbor. And I'm pretty sure my mother knew the neighbor was doing it and allowed it. And in addition to abusing me that way herself. And so I get how Elizabeth feels.
Right. And there's just no safety there.
Yeah, who do you tell?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Where do you hide?
And when I did finally say something about it, I was in my 30s, and precisely no one believed me.
Right.
Nobody. She had also molested my brother, my younger brother, and everyone believed him, but they told me I was lying to just get attention because he was abused too. So, I didn't want the limelight on him. I wanted some attention. No, that's not the kind of attention I want.
Exactly.
I just thought I had been to therapy and it kind of came out. It was like one of those, it's hard to describe like buried memories to people.
Right. Right. Because especially you at a young age, you kind of tend to gaslight yourself in order to believe, whatever you need to believe to get past it to survive. Like it really is kind of like a survival mechanism.
Yep. It's not like I forgot it.
No, you just put it
I
somewhere.
put it away where I wouldn't look at it.
Yes.
And when I was in therapy and it just came out,
Yeah.
like I just started talking about it. And then my brother had a similar thing happen. He was watching Dr. Phil actually. That's when he remembered and it all came out. And I thought I would be in solidarity and be like, yeah, me too.
Right.
But that is not how it went. My family is a toxic cesspool in a Piggly Wiggly parking lot. Not a lot of depth, just sort of evil. But yeah, that's why this case is hard for me. And I know what it's like to love a parent who also did something monstrous and unspeakable to you.
Right.
And so when I do the research and I see the victim blaming, and yes, it's here too, don't worry. It upsets me a lot.
Right. I had to have a conversation with my husband about this earlier today because these cases in particular this month are very victim blaming.
Yes.
It's very like, well, why didn't they get out? Or why didn't they do this? Or why didn't they do that? And that was, most of my life, you know? It's like,
Oh, I've been asked that
why didn't
question.
you do this and why didn't you do that?
Well, first of all, I was 6. Not really sure. My dad was verbally abusive and emotionally abusive, so I didn't feel safe with him. Everyone loved my mother, so they wouldn't have believed me anyway. And my mother convinced me it was normal, and that's just what happens. And it was because she loved me. So when you're brainwashed and lied to and gaslit
And a child.
and a lot of these victims are adults, but I will tell you this, as an adult, I was already primed from the abuse I had received as a child to accept more abuse as an adult.
Same.
And the abuse, y'all, doesn't happen overnight. It's not just like, whoa, hello, I've come to abuse you suddenly. It is slow. It is first wearing down all your self-esteem. Right. It is isolating you from family and friends. And then when they have full control, that's when the abuse really kicks up. And so I just wanted to take this as an aside and talk about that before we get into the case itself, because I know, because I receive a lot of messages that a lot of you have experienced child sexual assault and child abuse and then went on to experience domestic violence and abuse later in life. And it's not your fault. And you didn't ask for it. And you're not damaged goods. Right. Go through the fucking list. If you hear that shit from family or friends, they're neither family nor friends. And they need to fuck off out of your life forever. Trust me on that. Trust me. I'll have some links to resources because this case is that rough. At the end in the description. So in most of the cases we've covered this month, it's been about strangers abducting people and holding them captive. But in this case, there is no stranger. Elizabeth Fritzl was held captive by her own father for 24 years, held in a basement that he'd specifically constructed for this purpose. Her own mother didn't know she was there. It was there in the basement that he raped her, and she had 7 children. Alone. But we'll get into that. Basically, you'll hear a lot of people mad at the mother in this case, right. Elizabeth's mother. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. And as we go forward, we'll talk about this, but I want to have a little bit more nuanced conversation than mother bad.
Right.
Mother knew and didn't care. I want to have a nuanced conversation about that.
Unless she's actually going down there into the basement like Rose West and, doing things.
Well, there's some... We'll get to it. Yeah. We'll get to it because there's a nuanced conversation to be had here. So we're going to start at the beginning. And like I said, I'd love to focus more on Elizabeth, but there's precious little information. So I will focus on Josef Fritzl, her father. But I'll talk about Elizabeth a little bit first. She was born April 6, 1966 in Amstetten, Lower Austria. Elizabeth was one of 7 children. She had 2 other sisters and 4 brothers. Josef, her father, had married her mother, Rosemarie, when Rosemarie was only 17 years old and he was 21. And he had actually met her when she was 16. And I find that to be a gross age difference, and I'll tell you why. People will say, they're pretty close in age. When you're that young, the years matter.
Yeah.
The couple years matter. And she was a very submissive and quiet girl. And and she was a kid still, and he was an adult. And the difference is that he had been working in this engineering firm for several years at this point. So he was a professional adult.
Yeah.
And she was the daughter of a colleague. I feel it's really inappropriate all over the place.
That's pretty gross.
So, again, we're going to talk a lot about Josef because why would anyone do something like this to their own child? I don't think we're going to get the answer to that question from this episode because everybody wants to lean real heavy on the childhood being to blame. And, of course, they love blaming the mother. And in this case, he does have not a great childhood and not a great mother. But, man... Neither did I, and I didn't lock anyone in a basement.
Right.
So, there we go. Josef was predominantly raised by his mother and grandmother in Amstetten, Lower Austria. His grandmother had been in a loveless marriage to a prominent mill owner. Now, the marriage struggled because Josef's grandmother, she couldn't have children. So the husband who desperately wanted children had children with 3 separate household servants.
Oh.
Yes. Now, it's important to talk about this because I think that's where he he gets the idea almost for what he does later. It sets it up.
Use and abuse your servants.
Or your children. They belong to you. Yes. They belong to you, so you can do anything you want to them. Okay. It's just, he likes to mirror things a lot. And we'll get more into that later. It's just a lot to unpack, you know? Yeah. And though it's not explicitly stated, it's pretty clear that these affairs were sanctioned by Josef's grandmother.
Meaning that she allowed it to happen?
Yes.
Wanted it to happen?
Yes, so she could have children to raise. These servants didn't get to raise these children.
Right.
Josef's grandmother raised them.
That's weird that the servants didn't raise them as well, because that's usually what would happen in a normal situation.
Nope. They were just basically there to have babies.
That's very...
gross.
Well, what's that show that I don't like to watch? Handmaid's Tale?
Oh, yeah.
I can't watch that show.
I'll take a brief aside to talk about the first 2 seasons of Handmaid's Tale were, good, I guess. It's terrible content. Like, it's sad and it's scary.
I couldn't make it past the first scene of the first episode.
It was hard for me, but I did watch it because I had read the book and was, I'm a big fan of Margaret Atwood in general and the work she's done.
Yeah, I've read the books.
Man, but then it goes off the rails and I call it just the stupid sad lady show. Yeah. And it's just dumb, and I'm so tired of seeing close-ups of Elizabeth Moss's face where she's pissed.
I don't know.
Girl, it's stupid. So, like I said, first 2 seasons worth it, the rest of it just garbage.
But
so,
this kind of...
it reminds me of that.
The idea sounds like the...
It is, like, I will get other women to have my children, and then we'll raise
the
them.
servants, and I will make the babies with the servants, whether they like it or not, kind of thing.
And so one of those children was Maria, Josef's mother. So basically, he had these kids via affairs with servants and gave them to Josef's grandmother to raise as her own. Fucked up. In 1934, Maria had Josef with a poor man. Like, that's how his dad's described. He's just a poor guy.
Some poor guy.
Yeah. Josef was given his grandmother's maiden name of Fritzl, which completely bypassed not only her own husband, but Josef's biological father, too. And names are kind of like last names, and whether you have a baby in or out of wedlock back then was actually really important.
Yeah. Well, it said a lot about like legal issues as well, as far as like where estates would go and things like that.
Sort of, but I
don't think that they had an estate. I'm just saying
they did, because like the mill owner was rich.
Oh, okay.
But Josef's not going to see any of that money because he is a bastard child.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like it affects that too.
But it was more of a social stigma issue than a legal issue here. He was really looked down upon by his peers, even for being like nowadays. Nobody
cares who your daddy is.
Nobody cares who
your mama is.
Nobody cares. Yeah. Or they shouldn't anyway.
But back then it was a really big deal.
Yes. Mm-hmm. When Josef was 3, the Nazi army came into Austria, and that's when Josef first heard Hitler speak in the town square, riding on his father's shoulders.
Ew, are we going to lean that way?
We do lean that way a little bit. He at least uses it as an excuse later.
Well, that sentence just sounded a lot like the opposite, which would be like, I remember the first time I saw Martin Luther King speak, and it was very awesome. But it sounded like he was pretty excited about that.
In 1938, Austria voted to join the Third Reich, which was not cool. Yeah. And his mother ends up getting arrested by occupying German forces and thrown into a concentration camp. And I want to make clear she's not Jewish or any of the other, minorities they picked on back then. Like, she wasn't LGBT, she wasn't Catholic, she wasn't Romney. She was just mouthy and rebellious. And
was she a sex worker by chance? Because I know that happened a lot too.
It is possible. Okay. I would say it's possible.
Said she was,
They could have made an accusation. She could have just talked shit on Hitler and his ugly, dumb mustache. Either way, I don't know. But as a result, Josef is sent to an orphanage because his father is away fighting in the war for the German army. Yeah. And this is horrible. He has been told his mother is dead, and he is just kind of devastated. Yeah. Which, naturally, he's 9. Like, that's very scary. Not great.
Yeah.
Not great. He's abused there, of course. He's, like, beaten and stuff. An intense feeling of abandonment and anger. Mm-hmm. And it sucked. And I just wonder where his grandmother and grandfather are at this point, but I could not find out why he didn't go stay with them. I think they just didn't fucking give a shit about Maria, if we're going to be honest. Yeah. So Josef is 9 when he's reunited with his mother. His father was fighting in the war and was captured by the Russians and wasn't released until 1948. And when he tried to rejoin his family, Maria and Josef both wanted nothing to do with him. And yeah. With his father gone, Josef's mother clearly started to have some mental health issues. She became very violent with Josef and physically abused him. She was not a warm or caring woman either. She just didn't give hugs and kisses, never said I love you to him. And it kind of made a deep hatred of women grow in him. I mean, I maintain something was wrong from day one. It's one of those nature and nurture cases.
Yeah.
And he admits it himself later, but
this definitely goes hand in hand.
At age 15, he started standing up to his mother, but he also started displaying some pretty aberrant behavior. He became a peeping Tom, looking into the windows of young couples having sex. He liked hearing and seeing them.
Ew, hearing, so he had to get super close.
Yes. He also started exposing himself to women.
Okay.
At 16, he moved to the Austrian city of Linz, and that's where he met his wife, Rosemary. He told friends that she would make a good wife because she was obedient and docile.
Ew.
For Josef, it is all about control and his deep hatred of women. They married, and he moved them back to his childhood home in Amstetten, but he continued to work in Linz. He's doing super well in his career because this is post-war, and we need engineers to rebuild all the shit we blew up. Yeah. Josef and Rosemary had a comfortable life and thus started having lots of kids. Elizabeth was the 4th out of 7. Despite doing well for himself with a career and family, Josef was deeply unhappy and became violent with his wife and children. He had a short fuse. He had a bad temper. He was always beating them and yelling at them. To escape his family, he'd go into Linz and to the red light district where he abused sex workers. In 1967, he stalked a young mother on her way home. She was only 27 years old, and he raped her. He was arrested and spent 18 months in prison. This comes up later.
18 months.
Yeah, isn't that great? So after 15 years, your criminal record is wiped clean in Austria. It's gone.
Oh my God.
So
this doesn't matter.
No. And it becomes important later, and I'll explain why. Josef rose far above his humble beginnings as the child of an unwed mother. Despite the rape conviction, he had a good reputation and growing wealth from his job. In the 70s, he bought a 3-story hotel and restaurant, and it was profitable for a few years, but when it started declining, there was a suspicious fire, and it burned the whole thing to the ground. Josef got the insurance money, and there was never any concrete proof he burned it down. After the restaurant debacle, Josef expanded his house. He built a rooftop terrace, an addition that would serve as 9 apartments, and started construction on a very large basement.
I don't like basements this month.
And his plans were starting to take shape. No. By the time Elizabeth is 12, Josef is obsessed with her. Ew. He believes that unlike his other children, he and Elizabeth have a lot in common. She reminds him of himself when he was young. Josef believes they have a special relationship. In reality, he's been molesting her since she was 11.
Oh my God.
And not a lot is known about Elizabeth's childhood, other than it was volatile. Her father abused all of her siblings and her, but she bore the brunt of his sexual abuse. Her father was very controlling and had to know where she was at all times, and she was not given much freedom. She did have friends, though. She was described as a lovely child, very sweet and friendly, but very calm and very quiet. That's just a survival mechanism. Mm-hmm. She was smart. She was friends with a set of twin girls. They walked to school together, and the friends of Elizabeth sensed that not everything in the house was okay. But back then, you did not talk about it.
Yeah.
They did not talk about it. Her friends also found her dad creepy and overbearing. They didn't like him. But again, that wasn't something that was discussed. So she never talked to her friends about it. And I think it's so sad.
Want to.
Either she, I mean, Yeah, I never talked to friends about it either.
Well, no, I never talked about, anything that happened with me because
I wanted to forget it while I was away.
Yeah, and you want to have fun with your friends. You don't want to talk about the saddest thing that you could possibly imagine.
Or it's embarrassing too. It feels so embarrassing and shameful.
And you always get the automatic, oh, I'm sorry right after. And that's
Or they look uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They make a face.
Yeah.
Elizabeth was allowed to attend a class in a nearby town and have a part-time job when she was in her teens. Her father started exposing himself to her and leaving pornographic magazines for her to find. Ew. He was grooming her, and his behavior became more oppressive the older she got. But as she's experiencing life in another town, and then she has this little job, she is desperately wanting to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
It's not talked about in a lot of the podcasts and research that I've done, but Josef was also keeping his mother, Maria, hostage.
How? Like
in the attic.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he basically, we're not sure how long.
Because he hated her?
Fucking hated her, yeah. We're not sure how long he kept her up there. It is, some people theorize up to 20 years. Because she became, like, infirm and kind of relied on him because she was older. And he bricked up the window in her fucking room.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
They think he kept her restrained. She couldn't get out of bed. And I don't know if Maria, was seen by the children or Rosemary knew she was up there. I mean, maybe she did, but just assumed she was sick. And Josef said, don't go up there. I'll handle it. I'll take care of her. Yeah. I don't know. I tried to find out. And it's just.
But that woman was so beaten and battered that, like, what's she going to do? Do something that he told her not to do?
Yeah, probably not.
If he says don't go up there, she's not going to go up there.
Exactly. Yeah. He later said it was revenge for how she abused him in his childhood, and she died in that attic in 1980.
Oh, my God.
He said this about his mother, quote, "She never showed me any love. She beat me and kicked me until I was on the floor and bleeding," he said. "I felt so weak and humiliated. I never got a kiss from her or even a hug, although I tried very hard to please her. The only thing she did with me was go to church. She beat me and kicked me until I was lying on the floor bleeding," he repeats himself. "I had a horrible fear from her. She kept insulting me and told me I was a Satan, a criminal, a no-good." And yeah, that's sad.
Yeah.
But it's not imprison a woman in the attic for 20 years sad.
It's leave her the fuck alone sad.
It just let her be old by herself and die alone sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if Elizabeth knew any of this was going on. I really don't. I don't know what Rosemary knew. Right. It's hard to say. Rosemary was most definitely a victim of Josef too. He beat her, he emotionally abused her, he was controlling. I'm sure she knew some things, and I get really twisted about mothers who know their husbands are abusing their kids sexually. I can't personally imagine just letting it happen, but I don't like judging people. This is not a scenario I've lived.
Right.
I don't know what it would be like to be so horrifically abused and then know that my children are being abused too, especially that way. We all love to say we wouldn't let it happen. But you don't know until you've been beaten down like that. I just don't know.
I don't know from that standpoint, but I do know what it's like to have children with an abuser and just hope and pray that they're not abusing your children when your children are out of sight.
Yeah. Or you've left them alone with them or something.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
I do know, though, that when my ex started abusing my kids, that motherfucker was gone. Yeah. Abuse me all day. Yeah. Don't you dare, my babies. Yeah. But I will tell you, I'm sure it comes from a privileged place. I can't walk in her shoes, and I'm not going to pass judgment. That's for Elizabeth to.
And we don't know what it was like in that household or what she knew at all.
No, I have no idea, and I'm not going to start accusing people of shit. On January 28th, 1983, Elizabeth runs away from home. It's to escape the horrific abuse at the hands of her vile, controlling, and obsessed father. Her freedom didn't last long because she's still under 18 at the time warrants were issued for her. Police found Elizabeth in Vienna, and it was over. Her father and mother drove there to get her. On the car ride home, Josef tells Elizabeth he will never let her run away again.
Oh, no.
Elizabeth is chilled by those words and has no idea that he intends on keeping that promise.
Oh, no.
In 1983, the basement dungeon is completed. Josef, with his engineering skills and contacts in the construction industry, has built these little interconnected rooms that are kind of all linked by a hallway. And they're just like 3 rooms. And the ceiling's only 5'6" tall.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. I mean, Elizabeth is short, so it's
Me
okay.
too, but still.
Still, can you imagine? The walls, he claims, are soundproof. They're not, kind of, but not really. There are no windows to let in sunlight. There's no, ventilation system. It is stuffy and dark in there. In May of 1984, Elizabeth decides, now that she's 18, she's going to move in with her older sister. She had just finished high school and was going to go on to waitress school, which I think is so interesting.
Waitress school.
They have that in Austria. Yeah.
So cute.
It is cute. Just think how much better our servers could be paid if they had a little school that they went to learn how to do proper customer service and stuff. I really enjoyed waiting tables back when in my youth. It was fun.
Once my brain started to deteriorate and I kept forgetting people's ketchup, then it was over for me. But yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. I like calling people honey, sugar.
Yeah, I turned into a completely different personality.
Me too. My twang.
Yeah.
My twang comes out real hard. I am a full banjo.
Yeah.
But yeah, Elizabeth was pretty desperate to get out of that house, but Josef was not going to let that happen.
It's so hard. It's so hard to get through this one.
Yeah. Elizabeth was now 18 and legally allowed to go wherever she wanted. But Josef just can't let it happen. On August 28th, 1984, he lures Elizabeth down to the basement by asking her to help him carry something to the garage. She doesn't know the basement even exists. He's putting a door on the basement. So she's holding it up while he's bolting it in, with a screwdriver. And while her back is to him, he takes a rag he has soaked in chloroform, holds it over her face, and he takes her down into the basement and locks her in there. He handcuffs her and left her in a room that just had a bed and an old TV.
Why is chloroform so easy to get?
They use it in cleaning, industrial cleaning. I know that.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Sorry to interrupt.
You can make it at home, too.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't want to know. It's fine.
Yeah, I used to have an anarchist cookbook. I can make all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything. Okay. The next day, he forces Elizabeth to write a letter, which he then drives over 100 miles away to mail to his own house.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Because immediately when Elizabeth goes missing, Rosemary files a missing persons report.
Right.
And she seems to have no idea that Elizabeth is in this secret basement. And I think because she files a police report, she really doesn't fucking know.
Well, and I think the reason why a lot of people don't know that there's a basement there and they're living there is because he's having all this other construction going on.
That's why he had that other construction going on.
He doesn't even fucking care about the rest of the construction. No. It was all just...
And he lied on the permits, so the officials don't know he has this basement either.
Oh.
It is a complete secret.
Wow.
Yeah.
This took so much planning.
It took I would say almost a decade of planning.
I was about to say, It probably took her whole life.
Yeah. He planned from probably the moment she was born to do this to her.
Oh, that makes me sick to my stomach.
The letter says that she has moved, and if her family comes looking for her, she will leave the country. Josef shows this to the police and also adds that he thinks Elizabeth has joined a cult. As she is an adult, there's no search for her. It's not illegal to move away. And that's what the police believe she's done. However, this did get some national attention. Her going missing. She was in the papers. She's mentioned a few other times a few years later. But nothing. Nobody. Of course, they can't find her. She's in his basement.
Right.
There's some speculation that Josef didn't intend to originally do this to his own daughter. That the reason he locked Elizabeth down there initially is because he feared she'd move out and she'd tell other people about the sexual abuse. I don't believe that. Not for 1 minute. This is planned because meticulously.
He abused all the other children.
Yeah.
He sexually abused all of them.
I don't think so.
Oh, he just took it out on her.
I've never heard in any of my research he did abuse his entire family, but I think he only sexually abused Elizabeth.
Okay.
Don't know. But Josef is a planner.
Yeah.
And we notice that with these guys. Yeah. They plan.
Yeah.
And it is
that's
chilling.
The only way you can keep somebody held captive as long as if you
plan. Exactly. Immediately, he beats her, tortures her, and rapes her, sometimes multiple times a day. She has no sunlight and only a TV. She is alone most of the time. Sometimes Josef leaves her tied up like a dog with a leash around her neck. Sometimes he handcuffs her. Not too long into her captivity, Elizabeth gets pregnant. She miscarries this baby. She's mostly alone to deal with all that pain and blood. She's probably scared to death and definitely needed to go to a doctor.
Yeah.
Elizabeth gets pregnant again in 1988, just a little over 3 years into her captivity. She gives birth to a little girl she names Kirsten. Elizabeth was given a book on childbirth, scissors, a towel, and a few diapers. And that's it. She had to give birth to that baby alone and in the dark, in that stuffy, humid basement. And to me, it sounds like a fucking horror movie.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it.
No.
On February 1st, 1990, Stefan is born. Again, Elizabeth is forced to give birth alone. And I seriously can't imagine anything more terrifying. I felt out of my mind when I was in labor.
What does he do with the children? What happens with the children?
She keeps them.
Really?
For now. Some of them. We'll get into it.
I can't, dude.
I can't imagine having to be alone through that and trying to deliver my own baby. Mm-mm. But she did it. This is strength. In May of 1993, Lisa is born. This baby has a heart defect and is in constant pain. The baby cries and cries and cries. And Elizabeth is constantly begging, please take this baby to the doctor. Please.
Right.
But he's afraid he'll get caught. And Josef then worries that even with the soundproofing, someone's going to hear the baby screaming.
No.
So he devises a plan. When little Lisa is 9 months old, Josef takes her from Elizabeth and places her in a basket with a note he forced Elizabeth to write, asking that her parents please look after her baby. He puts the baby on his own doorstep for his wife, Rosemarie, to find. Of course, she agrees to look after her granddaughter. Baby Lisa is taken for emergency heart surgery, makes a full recovery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The state gives parental rights to Josef and Rosemarie. Now, this is where it comes back up that if they had known about his prior sex conviction, his rape conviction, he would not have been allowed to adopt that baby. But because they wipe the records every 15 years, it's already off his fucking record by this time because it's been 20 years.
God bless.
Meanwhile, down in the basement, the children are getting older and the space is getting cramped. Elizabeth begs and begs Josef to make the basement bigger. He agrees, but forces Elizabeth and her children to dig it out by hand. And this takes a very long time.
What?
Yeah, he's a monster. In February of 1994, Elizabeth gives birth to Monica. When Monica is 10 months old, Josef takes her from Elizabeth, puts her on the doorstep in a little baby buggy.
God.
Instead of a note, this time, Elizabeth calls the house. It's hard to understand her, and it's later revealed that this was a recording of Elizabeth and Josef made the phone call from outside of town.
Wow.
Rosemarie goes to the police with this and said Elizabeth sounded funny, but again, nothing is done because it's assumed that Elizabeth has left of her own free will. Rosemarie expresses surprise that Elizabeth somehow knew their new unlisted phone number. For all his planning and smart, he make a lot of dumb fuck mistakes, just saying.
Well, good. I'm glad he made mistakes.
Yeah. On April 28th of 1996, Elizabeth gives birth to twin boys, Alexander and Michael. But there's something wrong with baby Michael. He's not breathing well. Elizabeth begs Josef to do something, but Josef decides to just let the baby die.
Oh, honey.
He then takes him and burns his body.
Oh, baby.
When baby Alexander is 15 months old, he's put on the doorstep with a note. He's adopted by Rosemarie and Josef as well.
So at this time, there's 3 upstairs and 3 downstairs? Is that where we're at?
We're 2 downstairs and 3 upstairs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. In order to keep Elizabeth and the children in line, he was telling them that he had rigged the hallways and passages with poisonous gas, that if they would try to escape, they'd be gassed. Inspiration he took from the Nazis, like a real swell human being. He told them that the door would shock them with electric volts if they touched it and tried to mess with it. So they never attempted it. I mean, if he's as diabolical to do this, why wouldn't he rig up gas and rig up the door?
Proven himself.
Yeah, she's terrified. She doesn't want her children hurt. Yeah. He uses them against her. Of course he does. In order to reach the area where Elizabeth and her children were, one would have to go through 8 different doors. Most of the doors could be operated by remote or a keypad you had to punch secret number in.
Wow.
He's an engineer, so it's like not a surprise. Yeah.
This is like a bank heist or something.
Yeah, it really is.
Like a secret vault where they keep the big diamond.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
On December 16th, 2002, Elizabeth gives birth to another boy. She names him Felix. She's allowed to keep him because Rosemary has told Josef she can't look after any more children.
Sweet baby.
At this point, Elizabeth has been imprisoned for 18 years.
Jesus Christ.
He often leaves the children and Elizabeth alone for weeks at a time when he goes on work trips. Here he indulges his constant need for sex with sex workers, but it's also a form of punishment. He withholds food and resources from Elizabeth and her kids for days if they displease him. Another punishment would be that he'd rape Elizabeth in front of her children to humiliate her. I just can't imagine. It's after the birth of Felix, a child he believes will take over for him once he's too old, that he starts thinking of ways that he can integrate Elizabeth and her children into his family upstairs. He's planning on releasing her, but only if she'll say what he wants her to say. But before he can do this, Kirsten, his eldest daughter with Elizabeth, becomes very, very critically ill. She's 19 and it's 2008. Kirsten is only given aspirin, but clearly she's more ill than that and needs to see a doctor. She's having issues with her kidneys, and it's bad. It's clear to Elizabeth that Josef is just going to let Kirsten die, just like he did with baby Michael. So for once, she's able to summon the courage and insist. She puts her foot down, and finally Josef agrees he will take Kirsten to the doctor. So he does. He also concocts a stupid fucking story about Elizabeth and Stefan and Felix and Kirsten for Rosemary and the police. He tells everyone that Elizabeth has finally escaped the cult and is moving back home to be with him and her mother.
Okay.
Nobody believes that shit, for the record. No one's buying it.
Yeah, my eyebrows are furrowed.
That's dumb.
I know it's bad radio, but I'm squinting my eyes. I don't like this.
Kirsten is dropped off at the hospital with very little information. It makes treating whatever is wrong with her difficult. Doctors treating Kirsten make a public appeal for Kirsten's mother to come forward so they can adequately treat the girl. And Elizabeth sees this on TV and is just devastated. She just wants to go to her kid. Mm-hmm. Again, Elizabeth is able to persuade Josef to let her go to the hospital. There, she's interviewed by the doctor treating Kirsten. Clearly, Elizabeth, who is terrified of her father and the outside world she hasn't seen in 24 years, acts sketchy as fuck.
Yeah.
So the police arrest her.
Oh. Mm-hmm. This actually feels like a good thing.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, good.
So she's not talking, though, in the interview room. And a lot of people want to victim blame right here. Like, well, you're safe. You're with the police.
You don't know that. It's been 20 years.
24 years.
24 years.
24 years. She is raped almost daily, beaten, tortured, humiliated. Her children are threatened. Her children, Felix and Stefan, are still back at the house.
Right.
Along with her other ones.
In the dungeon.
Yeah, they're in the dungeon.
Yeah.
And she knows that if she doesn't act right, he will kill them.
They're going to stay in the dungeon until they just die.
Only until they threaten to take away her children and promise she never has to see her father again does she say what happens. Yeah. It takes her over 2 hours to tell her story.
I mean, she's trying to save her kids.
Yeah, and it's finally over. Josef is arrested.
Oh, God.
Elizabeth and all 6 of her surviving children and Rosemary are taken into care. We don't have anything like this in the U.S., for the record. Look at what happened to the Turpin 13.
Oh, my God.
But they were in clinics and like safe houses, and they tried at first. They kept the children who had been upstairs separated from the downstairs children because there was a lot of issues. Number one, the downstairs children had PTSD. Yeah. They were having constant panic attacks. Yeah. The outside world freaked them the fuck out, obviously.
Yeah.
And the upstairs children were horrified to learn that Elizabeth was even their mother.
Right.
They thought she was dead. or had not wanted them. And so they were very resentful
Right.
of the kids who got to be with her downstairs because they were also being abused by Josef. Josef, excuse me. And it's like, so they waited before reunification.
Yeah, it's like when Ariel Castro pitted the girls against each other.
Yes.
And there's so much psychology behind being held captive. Like, obviously, we can't get into it, but it's very interesting. The two sets of people being held captive
in different ways.
Each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's devastating.
And, and one of the reasons he only considered letting Elizabeth go was that Felix needed to go to school because this was his little protege. He was going to make him just like him. He was going to inherit the basement.
Ew.
Yeah, it's fucked, dude. So, yeah, they give him therapy, and eventually they're all reunited together. But then Elizabeth has a hard time dealing with her mother because she believed that her mother probably knew more than she let on, that she didn't look very hard for her when she went missing.
Right, and there's that extra level of resentment, like, why didn't you come get me? Why didn't you help me?
Why didn't you look harder?
Yeah.
Why did you believe him?
Yeah.
You knew he was doing this. You had to have.
But
we don't know.
Yeah, and we can't necessarily say that.
Clearly, she'd been groomed since she was young, and she'd been abused, I'm sure, in every way. And I think she was just dissociated and beaten down. Mm-hmm. And I just ask that we try and extend empathy to every victim in this.
Right.
Even when doesn't look good on paper. Mm-hmm. Because that's what makes us good and human. Mm-hmm. At first, it is clear that Josef was readying an innocent by reason of insanity plea. He spoke of growing up under Nazi rule, his abusive mother, but he would contradict himself and say that he was a born rapist and that he had an evil side that would come out. He also told investigators that it was consensual sex with Elizabeth, that he imprisoned her because as a teen she couldn't follow the rules and he was only trying to protect her. When he went to trial, Elizabeth showed up in disguise to escape the media, but she wanted her father to see her. Wow. Yeah. And
That's
they locked.
Interesting that she showed up in disguise.
And when they locked eyes, he went completely pale. Good. The next day, he pleaded guilty to all the charges, including negligent homicide of that baby.
Good girl. So proud of her.
He was sentenced to life in prison. For many years of his sentence, he was in a psychiatric hospital. In 2021, he was put in general population. He is up for parole this year, and I sincerely doubt he'll get it.
Yeah, he better not.
Life was tough for Elizabeth and her kids following their imprisonment. Stefan couldn't walk properly because he was 5'8", and the basement ceiling only went as high as 5'6", so he had to walk stooped over all the time.
Oh, my God.
I just can't. It's just so sad. Yeah. Elizabeth was estranged for a while from her mother. She said her mother was too passive. And I don't know. I get it. But now they are reconciling.
Okay.
So she got Elizabeth got reunited with all of her kids, all 6 surviving children, including the ones that Rosemary had been raising.
Right. And
she did, even when they were estranged, let those children go spend as much time with Rosemary as they wanted to, because that was their mom.
Right.
It took them a long time to see Elizabeth as their mom, and that's understandable. And I think that was really strong of her.
Well, and I think that it's part of the process. There's such a huge, healing is never ending, but there's such a process of overcoming something like this. And I feel that was part of her process, is to go through the resentment towards her mother, and come out the other side.
She did. Yeah. They are now pretty much reconciled and working on their relationship, and I'm happy for her. I just hope it doesn't blow up on her in any way. She does not deserve any more bullshit.
Oh my goodness.
The kids enjoy being outside, playing video games, and they're all doing much better.
Good.
But healing is going to be a long time coming. Elizabeth has a reported romance with one of her bodyguards.
Oh, good. Sorry, I was yawning. Oh, I love those types of romances.
He is quite a bit younger than her.
Well,
But I think some of her development might be stunted from being held captive and not getting to interact with the real world. Why does she have bodyguards? Because the paparazzi won't leave her the fuck alone.
And she needs protection.
Yeah. She's not aware of the world and how it works. Yeah. She never got a chance. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. The fucking paparazzi even busted into her house. They just broke into her fucking house once. Yeah. So they have to be put in safe houses.
She needs more bodyguards because she's got one
busy. He's too busy. But I'm just happy she can have like a romance and stuff.
Oh,
she deserves it.
You know what I mean? Like her being in love with her bodyguard is just that extra level of safety and security.
That's absolutely why she fell in love with him. I get it.
It makes me fall in love for them. Like, that's just so
I want
sweet.
it to work out, and I want it to be wholesome, and so I didn't dig into it too hard, so I won't be disappointed.
Yes. Yes.
By the way, Kirsten made a full recovery.
Oh, good.
And she was reunited with her mother and siblings. But she spent 19 years of her life in that fucking hole. And I'm just so disgusted. So I want to briefly talk about why. Why did he do it? I just think he's fucked up.
Yeah, he's fucked up.
Just a fucked up evil man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I'm just real tired of, well, his childhood was bad. Same. So I've abused and imprisoned and raped nobody. Ever.
Well, and the thing is we need to end the stigma on seeking mental health help. I think that everybody should have a therapist no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's like having a dentist.
Or a doctor.
Have one.
You should just have one.
And you should get checked up periodically throughout the year.
And this is where I go back to, I talk a lot about the men who need to be put in rice, as we've said.
Put the men in rice.
Put them right in there.
I'm making a t-shirt for us for that.
It needs to be. Yes. Put them in rice. Put them in there. They are malfunctioning.
Because they're malfunctioning. It's because we see this all the time with the exposing yourself and being obsessed with all this. I was thinking about that earlier. Like, I don't know of any female killers that were like, oh, I'm going to show my genitals to people. Like, that's not a common thing that we see.
To be fair, we've got a little pocket, and it's not a lot to look at. But I ain't show my titties to nobody who don't want to see them.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too many people out there that don't want to see some titties.
Consent's really important.
But you know what I mean, though. Like,
nobody is. Women aren't peeping Toms.
Yes.
Typically. I've never heard of one. And they're not flashing themselves at people unless there's Mardi Gras beads involved.
It feels like a mental illness that men suffer from because of the stigma in society. I feel like...
I think it's more what we have is toxic masculinity and a feeling of entitlement.
Yeah.
And I keep saying toxic masculinity hurts everyone, not just men.
It really does.
This man had a horrific childhood that was scary and hurt him. Mm-hmm. But men don't cry. Men don't have feelings like that.
He didn't have a safe place to go.
No.
Emotionally, physically.
So it just boiled on the inside and came out all this bullshit. Mm-hmm. And his mother had a weird childhood too, and she was not well.
Right.
She had no mental health help.
Right.
She wouldn't have abused her child if she had been put somewhere where she could get some help.
Yep. So
it all comes back to toxic masculinity bad, hurts everyone. Mental health care is a trash fire. There isn't any. We're all raw dogging this, and it's hard.
It's so fucking important. I realize as I get older that the things that I used to think that were important are not necessarily important at all.
No.
And the things that I've always overlooked, like water, drinking as much water as possible, moisturizer.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
Yes. Those things are really important. It's just like mental health and seeking therapy and things like that.
I would say it's more important than moisturizer, your mental health, for sure.
Really? Yeah, I know. It's like...
it's the most. Yeah. Taking care of your mental health. So what? Okay. So I've thought this, like, how do I help people who can't get help? Because who has the money for this in this economy?
When you go to free therapy, which is what I've tried to do.
Well, you get what you pay for.
And girl, I end up teaching them. I'm basically,
I'm their therapist
and their, mentor and their teacher. And
why am I doing this? No. Okay. So what I want you to do is therapy yourself. I therapy myself. Yeah. I studied cognitive behavioral therapy.
What works for you.
And I just workshop that shit with myself. I keep a little journal. I talk to people. Ask first. It's important.
Find a good listener.
Yeah.
Find a good listener. Go sit next to a body of water and talk to your good listener. Have a designated good listener.
But do ask first, because we all going through some shit, and consent's really important, even for deep emotional talks. You can't just dump all your shit on somebody.
That should be pretty normalized. That should definitely be something.
Like, hey, can I vent to you?
Yeah. Hey, do you have a second for me to vent? I'm going through stuff.
Yeah. Please ask,
And
because
it should
people
be normalized.
trauma dump on me all the time, and it's
Right.
rough, y'all. I can't always handle it. I got to take a break.
And the no's should be normalized too. Saying, no, I really can't handle it right now. Maybe.
Thank you for
later.
asking,
Yeah,
but I'll
thank
be
you
there for
asking.
you when I can. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's, and I'm not saying turn down a friend who's in crisis, obviously, but do take care of yourself. Everybody needs to establish boundaries. And now for business time.
Speaking of all of that, you can hit us up on our link tree and go into our Discord and talk to us anytime. We have a vent channel.
That's
for that.
right. You don't go in the vent channel if you can't handle it. That's the rules,
A lot of times I can't handle the vent channel, so what do? I beeline for the memes and I disassociate through really shitty laughter.
And our little general chat is just for chit-chatting, showing me your dogs, and we have case discussion. Our Discord's fun, not behind a paywall, because I don't want people to pay to talk to me. That's really weird.
Yeah.
Feels gross.
Yeah, it does.
I'm a nobody from Arkansas. No one should be paying to talk to me. It's very bizarre. And I'm not saying, hey, we're small for now, but we are growing. Our Discord's getting pretty big. There will come a time, y'all, where we can't be as personable
or as active.
or as active because we're busy trying to make content.
But we are in there as much as humanly possible.
As much as I can be, yes.
Maris is really good being in there sometimes whenever he
Yes.
can handle it. We all kind of take turns.
We do.
And then we have some almost like key players, I guess.
Well, I've made them moderators, so they're
Yes.
kind of like, they
We've
stand
got some
in.
great people in there.
We sure
Some
do.
Really, really great people.
It's a nice community.
People from all walks of life, people from all genders and spectrums and everything. You
It's
name
chill
it.
place.
Yeah. And it's safe.
So also, business time. Firstly, I want to thank y'all so much because I sold out my soap.
Hell yeah.
But guess what? I restocked that shit.
Bitches.
I will have perfume oil up too, and you're going to want it because it smells. This is the most amazing smelling collection I've ever made. I'm just going to toot my own horn. It's some beautiful stuff. I consider them little temporary works of art. So don't say, oh, it's too pretty to use. No, you're supposed to use it. Spoil yourself. Have a little luxury in your hand. It's so nice to have something affordable, but that's fancy.
Her
We
soap
all
really
need-
is beautiful.
And it's good for you
Gorgeous.
too. Yeah, it's good for your skin. It's moisturizing and delightful. Won't leave you dry. Because I have eczema. So that's why I kind of got into this, was to make soap that my skin likes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's all I use now. We also have a Patreon, of course.
Y'all, we almost have 90 members in our Patreon.
I'm so excited.
We have never had as many as we have right now. I think we topped ourselves like last week, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. But y'all have just been making our day. We get new members all the time. It's just really great.
It is nice.
I'm blushing and it's really uncomfortable because we've gotten so much love and appreciation lately too. People have been messaging us.
Oh, yeah, I
emailing
love
us,
that shit. It's
commenting, tagging. All of your social media presence and interactions have really helped.
Oh, yeah, feel free to tag away.
This week,
Don't be
this
shy.
month has been so hard on our psyche and on our own emotions that every little bit of kindness that y'all show us
Goes a long way.
it really means a lot.
Yeah, and if you want to be a patron, we have a $1, $5, and $10 tier. We have exclusive episodes once a week. We have a pen pal tier where we send you a letter and a little present if you're in the United States only. I can't ship to you, Australia. It will cost me $55.
We love you, Australia. We want to come to you.
If you are,
hang out.
if you are an international patron and you want the pen pal tier, give me your email and I will send you some cool digital shit. Yeah. I can do anything, so that's just how that goes.
But man, I love y'all. You guys have been so good to us.
Yes, and if all you can do to support this podcast is listen, know that it is greatly appreciated every day. And thank you for reaching out, too.
Really.
I appreciate the encouragement. Because like Willow said, this month has been very hard on me. I have cried a lot, and it's made me think of some yucky memories. So if y'all want to give us a little tip for that emotional labor, it would be greatly appreciated. Me and Willow could stand to go get a damn coffee.
Girl, at this point, I need like a full sushi platter, but a coffee will do too.
You know what? I would kill a man for some sushi.
A best friend sushi date.
Girl,
Would be so nice.
don't make me cry. I want that now.
So bad.
Oh,
Anyway.
I have a mouth wish for sushi now.
And a heart wish.
Fuck you
I know.
entirely. I'm going to end it on that. I love you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Find us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/cruelty has all the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.